is right here. And right now we have journalist Emmanuel Colley, Emmanuel T. Colley, I'm told. He's the president of Education Journalism Fellowship Network of Liberia. And Mr. Jerosi Koyene, he's the co-chair of the body. Of course, what's their mission? It's the first time I'm hearing this Education Journalism Fellowship Network of Liberia. Mr. President and co-chair, a very good morning. Thanks for joining me here, and it's good to have you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Yega. It's great to join you this morning on the Super Morning Show. We're grateful.
It's great to be here. Thank you, Yega.
Wonderful. I think it's difficult to have journalists interview journalists, but I'm going to be right here this morning and see how we can interact on this program. Later on, we'll open up the lines to hear from you, the public. But again, what do we know about Education Journalism Fellowship Network of Liberia?
Okay, so the Education Journalism Fellowship Network of Liberia is a conglomeration of journalists who are, passionate about education. Over the years, we've had, Sports Writers Association of Liberia, Female Journalists Association of Liberia, and other auxiliary journalism groupings. But we have now had, a group of journalists who, are passionate to report on education. So of late, the youth movement for collective action, they had a training for about 9 journalists from Magibi and Montserrat. So part of that training, we established a network to begin to spotlight issues in education. I mean, over the years, there have been progress made in education. Though the challenges are always there, but I think it's time that journalists begin to change the narrative. How can we give a broad outlook on the different issues in education? So, and this network was established with a full mandate to recruit, journalists across the country, to begin to report. Because the thing is, as journalists, people always say we are the base sectors, we are, opinion shaper. So once we begin to report on education, what happens? It drives public opinion. And that's why even on this radio, if you have one politician talking about politics and stuff, you see a lot of people calling. Or if you start to talk about education and some of the gains and how we can help to improve the sector, not many people will call because it's how we journalists over the years, have said that bar. So this time around, we say, hey, even Yeka, you count the super morning show. Let me take 1 or 2 minutes of your time to encourage a child, to see education as the only viable alternative to a better future. With that, the more we talk about it, the more it starts, to bear the needed dividend. So that's why we came out, to establish the institution or this network to begin to look at education as a breathtaking priority, looking at some of the different issues and how we can help to surmount some of those doubting challenges.
The president of the Education Journalism Fellowship Network of Liberia, Emmanuel Colley. Let's hear from your coach here, Gerald.
Thank you, Yega. You said president, then the vice is the vice president. So you can be president, then you have co-chair. So the vice president of the network.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thanks for the
It is,
clarity.
yeah, it is great being here.
Yeah.
So as man president said, he has propounded more on the function, the purpose of this education fellowship, and it is all about um, reporting, shining the lights on the education sector. There have been lots of improvements in different sectors when it comes to uh, journalism reporting on this sector. Groundbreaking investigation has led to positive results in several sectors, including the agriculture sector, forestry, and other sectors. But the education sector, that is one of the most important sectors of the country, is underreported. As my president said, we place emphasis, we show more concern in the other sector, especially politics, where he said when you open a political program here now and talk about politics, you will have more than 99% of the callers, the listeners, they will be play active role on the program, they will participate. But you bring about education issue, you know, just few people will show interest. If you have education program and you give the opportunity to the public to participate, to have their say, it will just be few people. But if the other sector, especially politics, you will see more people participating, showing interest. Now the journalists are paid sector, they set the agenda. So we now, a group of journalists who want to focus on reporting extensively on the education sector to see the dividend, to see positive impact, because the sector is so important.
And
without education, you and I, we won't be what we are doing this morning.
And I heard you say you're on a rigorous process to ensure that you can recruit more people, more journalists. But to what extent, and where are you guys from? Is it that you are assigned at education institutions or what?
We are not assigned at specific education institutions. What happened? It's a group of journalists, as you said. We are 9 Liberian journalists that was trained by U Movement. U Movement is a youth-led organization that into education and a lot of other things, health and youth activities. So we were trained and then we were empowered to report extensively. So not just assigned as specific education sector, but just to talk about education wherever we are assigned, whatever we do, going after the news in education, the activities, investigation, and reporting, as you said, on the positive impact and the good things that are happening in the sector as well as the challenges. So if I'm assigned at the Capitol building, though I'm there reporting on the activities there, but I should show keen interest in the education activity, the aspect, the budget, and other things to report on it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, let me hear from the president, Emmanuel Colley. You spoke about the progress in the sector, you spoke about challenges. I'd like to first start with the different source of stories that probably the public will need to know about in this sector. That's the education sector. What are the source of stories we know about thus far?
Great. You are aware, or you may be aware, in February and March of this year, I was opportune to have traveled extensively with the Minister of Education of this republic. We visited the entire country from one locale to the other. One of what I observed was the fact that for the first time over 30 years, the Ministry of Education got a grant from the World Bank, to ensure the improvements of the physical conditions of schools across the country. So the minister, made a tour to assess the level of progress we made on all 156 public high schools across the country. So with that, education is not just about going in the classroom. The environmental matters. So the grant that was provided by the World Bank improved, the physical infrastructure of some of those schools. That is very momentous. Currently on the ARAS project, the government of Liberia, through the Ministry of Education, is establishing or building about 3 model schools across the country. One is to be built.
And you think
in
it's
Kakata.
important to report on?
Of course, yes. These are very important institutions that are meant to provide technical vocational education for students. Because just going to school is just one thing. But after you have left high school, I know, you have to have some skills that will prepare you perhaps to go to university and stuff like that.
As a
So
journalist,
the model school will be used, as a center resident for, high school students from 10 all the way to 12th grade. So one is to be built in Kakata, one to be built in Banga, and another to be built in Ganta. With that, he tried to decentralize. Send during the administration of President Wayne, and V.S. Tottenham, when Tottenham High was built around 12th Street, you've now had a structure across the country that has that same facility. So it's a replica of Tottenham High that will be built in those 3 counties, and that is very momentous.
as a journalist and member of the Education Journalists and Fellowship Network of Liberia, even though we'll talk about funding, it's difficult to have people come together and you don't talk about funding. How do you ensure your sustainability? And in addition to that is, do you feel heard to a certain extent when you listen to a couple of stories on the radio across the country, or you read the newspapers or watch the television stations, and not much is said about education? And do you feel heard? It's a general question. Let me hear.
Yeah, so
from
let me
both.
get my VP will later on. The thing is, if we don't start to give education a priority, then what more do we want? Because there is no nation that has ever been built in the absence of education. Because education drives innovation. Everything you've seen in the technology is because of education.
Yeah, others will
So-
think contrary. They think that once you have the financial resources, you're capable of making life.
So that's why we want to make education a priority, because for Liberia to thrive the other countries, we have to make education a priority, because that's the only way, that's the foundation upon which a nation thrives. So that's why the Education Journalism Fellowship Network of Liberia is trying to redirect the way. How can we start to spotlight education issues? Because if we don't report education, how will the international community knows that Liberia, is making progress? I was just reading the MCC scorecard, and in the area of education, not much was done there. And that's why the U.S. government, through its embassy near Monrovia, is saying it's time for the government to put more interest in human capital development, because that is key. I mean, like I said, you don't have a nation that will develop when you don't have a like-minded people, people who are well-brained in specific area. You need the expertise, you need the expatriate, you need those people to beef all the strength and make education a viable and enviable sector.
To what extent, Jared is going to come in, but to what extent are you saying that reporting educational stories will impact the sector?
Great. The fact is, once you start to report, people get to know the different issues. And that's why education is key and information is key. So the thing is, if we don't report on education, how will you know that there is a school that has been built in Masambo Lahombe, for example, in Lofa, maybe in the southeast? How do people get to know? So everybody stays in Monrovia and say, maybe nothing has been done because people are not reporting the sector. But if a politician comes and say, oh, I'm doing this, that's when you get to know, oh, okay, the man is doing well. So that's why we say, hey, it's time that we journalists, while it is true that we have other areas of interest, but let's start to make education a reporting tool that will inform policymakers, So that is key. And once we start to, report on education, trust me, we try to widen the debate in terms of some of the progresses. I know the challenges will always be there, because, part of the trade with the minister, is starting to know that even in most of the schools, people are still sitting on rocks and stuff like that. But yes, while it is true that those challenges are there, but there are also progress has been made. And how we journalists can report in a way that it attracts, the people to education. Because when we start to report education, you have partners who will start to come. People want to come in. The World Bank has been a partner to Liberia. They'll start to come in and fund some of the projects, and with that, you make an impact. And journalism is more about impact.
Fast tracking education stories in Liberia. Let's hear from Jerry.
Yeah, so as per your question, what happened if we don't report on the sector, or how we feel that the sector is only reported?
Even in the wake of challenges.
Yeah, it is so important that we do that, because everything we do here hinges on education. Just this year, the World Bank country report, it talked about Liberia continue to lag behind, and that's account because of the human capital index, the higher loss in human capital index. Are we getting me? Liberia, poor education accounts for highest loss of human capital index in Liberia. So it just shows you that it's so important that the education sector is prioritized. And we that set the agenda, it is incumbent on us to pay attention to shining the lights on the sector, to highlighting some of the positive gains and the challenges, so that policymakers can be informed to make better decisions that will improve the sector.
Are you also aware that there exist challenges confronting the education sector, for which your organization ought to report on?
Great, because that's one of the key objectives of this movement.
Okay.
When we report, we don't just report because we want to report.
You just don't report the positive.
No, no, we are reporting both
Okay.
the progresses and the challenges.
Okay.
Because what happens is if we start to give a bird outlook on some of the challenges, that alone will inform donor partners,
the
the
policy-
government.
the policy
that, hey,
actors.
there is a need for this to be done in a sector. Let's assume that perhaps I want to report on education. There is a particular school in Kakata, because I hear from there. It's right in the heart of the city. And so if I start to report on that story because of the environment, maybe we looking at the issue of noise pollution and the distraction it causes for the students, because you have the school right in the heart of the city. So with that, it could attract and say, okay, there's a need that we relocate the school. You go to a safer environment that has made impact, and you're going to attract people, like I said, because once people get to know the story, and you go into a school and report a story that talks about the unhealthy environment, people will make interventions. That your story has made impact, and part of this network, yearly, as per support from the youth movement, yearly we're going to award the best education reporter of the year. It's time that we start to make education the breathtaking priority, because once you start to award people in terms of their story quality, the impact it has made, you try to encourage others to say, okay, I think there's a need that I start to write educational stories in a more way that affects change. So with that, I think people will start to drive a bit and try to shift, to start to report on education.
And
Yes, Chera, just conclude, then we can take some
in
calls.
addition to that, he talks about we will be given awards to just encourage people. We're also talking about having the newsletter.
Have you contacted the Ministry of Education to what
Of
extent are they collaborating with you?
Of course.
The Ministry of Education will be one of our biggest and reliable partners. So as I said, we are talking about having a newsletter where we're thinking about having it quarterly, maybe every 3 months we release one, and it will be exclusively about the education sector. And not only in Monrovia, we envisage going across the entire country
to decentralize
it,
the activities.
and report on the education sector holistically, highlighting the positive aspects of the sector and the challenges for positive results.
Now, it said that your membership is open up. I heard you talked about that from the onset, but what if you are covering maybe the legislature or you are a health reporter? To what extent can you be a member of the Education Journalism Fellowship Network of Liberia?
So we anticipate having large members in the future, but for now we are, as I said, we are 9 original fellows that will start this project,
Okay.
and as time go by, we will incorporate others.
Let me
Yeah.
take few calls on the line right now. I hope I can have Caroline Valor. Have been trying to reach Hal, but it's difficult this morning. But please call us on 0770879263 or 0886879263. Just in case you have some questions for my guest this morning. Emmanuel Colley is the president of Education Journalism Fellowship Network of Liberia, and Cherokee Koyen, he's the vice president. He said, don't call me coach here, but it's right here on ELBC Radio 99.9. Your calls are welcome right now. I'm trying to get in touch, but again, it's difficult. I don't know to what extent. But please call us 0886-879-2633 right here. The show will have Caroline on the line. Caroline, a very good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to the Super Morning Show on ELBC.
Thank you. It's a pleasure being on the show this morning.
Wonderful. To what extent are you collaborating with the Education Journalism Fellowship Network of Liberia?
Yeah, so Youth Movement for Progressive Action is a national NGO that is supporting the Ministry of Education to improve learning outcomes in Liberia. So we have this project with Mexico, the Field, that is supporting effective advocacy in Liberia, and Mexico with KPK and CCC partners, with funding from the European Union, Irish Aid, and that of Sudan. So under this project, we identify that the journalists will focus both on funding, then actually putting on issues in the education system. And there are a lot of happenings around education, but people are not really focusing on it.
Are you bothered about that?
Mhm.
Are you bothered about that?
Oh, yes. You know, there are a lot of national documents that speak to education that the public is not aware of. If let's see the Education Reform Act, how many of our citizens in Liberia have access to the document? How many of them know what is actually in that document? Look at the ESP, the education sector thing. It has already been developed. It was approved August 24 by the President of Liberia. And that document is the working tool for the Ministry of Education for the next 5 years. How many of our citizens, how many of those working in education have access to that document? Or how many of them know the content of that document? So if these things must take effect, the media must take up their time to speak on education issues and create a lot of awareness. And we know that can only be done through the media. So we decided to work with the Teacher Equity School of Journalism, that is Media A, to train a cohort of professional journalists that will be able to report and speak on education issues in Liberia. And that was how we formed the Education Journalist Fellowship that is being headed by Emmanuel G. Price.
Oh, okay. That's good to know your partnership. Thank you ever so much.
Thank you.
Of course, Caroline Valor is a partner in progress. Right here on 99.9, we're running out of time already. I hope we had sufficient of time to have callers call in this morning. But of course, gentlemen, as we're concluding, let me start up with Gerald C. Koyene, who is the Vice President of the Education Journalism Fellowship Network of Liberia. Probably there were other issues wouldn't highlight. He'd like to comment on briefly before I can take leave of you.
Yes, I just want to.
Sorry, okay.
Okay, I just want to stress the importance of covering the education sector. The latest report from the World Bank, as I was saying, 2021 index, the economic update report says the child born in Liberia, the possibility of that child achieving he or she,
Quality education.
quality education, or his, fullest potential is just 32%. Out of 100%,
You think it's low?
that is so low. Out of 100, you get 32% the possibility of the child achieving the fullest potential. So, and all because of what? No,
The wetness.
no.
People reporting.
support to the
Okay.
system, the education sector.
And you think by reporting
So
you
by
can attract a lot of
reporting,
investment to the sector?
Yeah, exactly. By reporting the sector, fleshing out some of the positive aspects about challenges, what is happening in the classroom, how the children are learning, how schools are going by the curriculum, it will really be helpful to the sector. So we are encouraged to join hands together to ensure that the fellowship is successful and our goals are achieved, and that is improvement in the sector.
Let me hear from the president, Emmanuel Colley.
Let me say thank you, you guys. It's been great being here. We as journalists stand that we redirect our reporting to education. If we want the best for Liberia, there's need to begin to engage more and report on education. With that, I'm very sure and upbeat that we are moving to a transformative and an illiterate society. Moving to a literate society, because illiteracy is almost like a poverty. For example, I've always said to people, we the children of Liberia, if your parent did not ever have a rubber farm, if you send a child to school, that child is your rubber farm. That child is your estate, because they are the ones who are tomorrow going to be there for you. So in the midst of difficulties, I know challenges will always be there, but we encourage our parents to see education as the only alternative for their children, because if you educate your child, trust me, they live by choice. Like the one lady told me the other time, because education, you're working, you're making money, you determine what you want to eat. You don't just eat
The
because
kind of
because
job
you're
to go
hungry.
for.
Kind of job to go for.
So the investment in education is maybe the surest way.
Of course, it's one of the sure pathways to fulfilling future, and that's what we want to make education a priority. Because, like I said, we cannot develop a nation if you don't have quality education. So if we start to report education, you can trust me, Liberia will be a line of prosperity, because prosperity comes when people are equipped and people are well ready and want to do the job.
Thank you, gentlemen, for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you. It was great being with you this morning.
Jera C. Koyenen is the Vice President of Education Journalism Fellowship Network of Liberia. Emmanuel Colley is the President of the organization. Right here on ELBC 99.9, very shortly, Representative Dawn Twan Glikian, Nemad County District 6 representative, is going to be my